On a chilly autumn afternoon, the streets of downtown Los Angeles buzzed with life. The air carried the faint aroma of roasted coffee beans wafting from nearby cafes, mingling with the sounds of honking cars and distant chatter. Among the bustling crowd walked Keanu Reeves, an actor known not just for his roles in blockbuster movies but also for his quiet humility and down-to-earth nature. Unlike many celebrities who preferred to be surrounded by entourages or hidden behind sunglasses, Keanu moved effortlessly through the city, almost blending into the fabric of everyday life. He had spent the morning at a small cafe tucked away, in a corner of the street. It wasn't one of those trendy spots frequented by influencers or paparazzi. Instead, it was a cozy little place where baristas knew their regulars by name. Keanu enjoyed moments like these, moments when he could simply exist without the weight of fame pressing down on him. With a steaming cup of black coffee in hand, he strolled leisurely, taking in the sights and sounds around him. As he turned onto a quieter side street lined with colorful food trucks and lively street performers, something unusual caught his eye. At first glance, it seemed like just another ordinary scene. People hurried past, some glancing briefly at the musicians playing soulful tunes while others stopped to buy snacks from vendors. But then, near the edge of the sidewalk, Keanu noticed a figure lying motionless on the ground. The man appeared disheveled, his clothes torn and dirty, his face weathered by time and hardship. To most passers-by, he might have looked like yet another homeless person sleeping off exhaustion, or perhaps too intoxicated to stand. Many chose to ignore him altogether, stepping carefully around him as if he were nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle. Others cast quick, judgmental glances before hurrying along, unwilling to get involved. But Keanu saw something different. There was something about the way the man lay there that didn't sit right with him. His body wasn't relaxed like someone deep in sleep. It was stiff, almost unnatural. And though his eyes were closed, his lips moved slightly as though he were trying to speak but couldn't find the strength. Something inside Keanu stirred, a mix of curiosity, concern, and instinctive empathy. Without giving himself time to second guess, he approached the stranger. The closer he got, the more alarming the situation became. The man's breathing was shallow, barely noticeable. His hands trembled weakly against the cold concrete, and his skin had taken on an unsettling pallor. Kneeling beside him, Keanu placed 2 fingers gently on the man's neck to check for a pulse. Relief washed over him when he felt a faint but steady beat beneath his fingertips. Still, the man needed help, and fast. For a moment, Keanu glanced around, hoping someone else would step forward. Surely someone must have seen this and called for assistance already. But the truth was clear. No one had. People continued walking by, either oblivious or indifferent. Some even muttered under their breath, making assumptions about the man's condition based solely on his appearance. Probably drunk, one person said dismissively as they passed. Another shook their head and muttered, "Not my problem." Keanu felt a pang of frustration, but there was no time to dwell on it. Instead, he sprang into action. Pulling out his phone, he dialed 911 with steady hands, providing precise details about their location and describing the man's condition as best he could. While waiting for emergency services to arrive, he stayed by the stranger's side, speaking softly to him in a reassuring tone. "Hey, you're going to be okay," he murmured, his voice calm and steady despite the tension in the air. "Help is coming. Just hold on." Though the man remained unresponsive, Keanu hoped that hearing a kind voice might offer some comfort, however small. He adjusted his scarf to shield the man's face from the biting wind and kept a watchful eye on his breathing, ready to act if anything changed. Every second felt like an eternity, but Keanu refused to leave his side. When the paramedics finally arrived, they worked quickly, assessing the man's condition and preparing to transport him to the nearest hospital. Keanu provided them with all the information he had gathered, ensuring they understood the urgency of the situation. Before stepping back, he did one final thing. He removed his own jacket and draped it over the man's frail body. It was a simple gesture, yet it spoke volumes about the kind of person Keanu was. As the ambulance drove away, sirens wailing in the distance, Keanu stood there for a moment, watching until it disappeared from view. He didn't know the man's name or story, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was far from over. Little did he realize that this seemingly random act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would touch countless lives, including his own. For now, though, Keanu simply took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and resumed his walk. The city around him carried on as usual, oblivious to the profound humanity that had unfolded on its streets. But somewhere within the chaos, a spark of hope had been ignited, a reminder that even in the busiest corners of the world, compassion could still shine brightly. As the ambulance sped away, its siren cutting through the hum of city life, Keanu stood rooted to the spot for a moment. The scene had unfolded so quickly, almost like a fleeting chapter in the story of his day, but it lingered heavily on his mind. He couldn't shake the image of the man lying there, vulnerable and alone, while the world around him moved forward as if nothing was wrong. It wasn't just pity or sadness that weighed on Keanu. It was something deeper, a sense of responsibility, perhaps, or an unspoken connection to the fragility of human existence. Keanu had always believed in the power of small actions. Growing up, he'd seen firsthand how kindness could make a difference even in the smallest ways. Whether it was offering a listening ear to someone going through a tough time or simply holding the door open for a stranger, he understood that every gesture mattered. This belief guided him now as he replayed the events in his mind. He didn't know the man's name, where he came from, or what circumstances had led him to collapse on that sidewalk. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that he had been there when help was needed. As he walked back toward the cafe where he'd started his afternoon, Keanu decided to follow up on the situation later. He made a mental note to call the hospital once he returned home, just to check on the man's condition. For now, though, all he could do was wait and hope. The paramedics worked efficiently once they arrived at the hospital. They ran tests, administered fluids, and monitored the man closely. It didn't take long for them to determine that he wasn't suffering from intoxication, as many bystanders had assumed. Instead, his body showed signs of extreme dehydration, malnutrition, and exhaustion. Years of living on the streets had taken a toll, leaving him physically and emotionally drained. But despite his frail state, the doctors were optimistic. With proper care and support, they believed he could recover. When the man finally regained consciousness, he found himself in a sterile hospital room, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. At first, he panicked, unsure of how he'd gotten there or why he was being treated with such care. A nurse gently explained what had happened, recounting the details of his collapse and the stranger who had stayed by his side until help arrived. "He gave us his jacket," she said softly, gesturing to the garment folded neatly on a chair nearby. "And he made sure you were okay before leaving." The man, whose name was Marcus, felt a lump rise in his throat. In his darkest moments, he had grown accustomed to being ignored, judged, or dismissed. The idea that someone, let alone a celebrity like Keanu Reeves, would stop to help him seemed almost surreal. As gratitude swelled within him, he realized he wanted to thank the man who had shown him such unexpected kindness. Meanwhile, Keanu kept his promise to himself. That evening, after returning to his quiet apartment, he picked up the phone and dialed the number for the hospital. After a brief conversation with a nurse, he learned that Marcus was stable and slowly recovering. Relieved, Keanu asked if he could leave his contact information in case Marcus wanted to reach out. The nurse assured him she would pass along the message, though she doubted Marcus would actually call. Celebrities often inspired awe, but reaching out to one felt like stepping into another world entirely. Days passed, and Marcus wrestled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he felt immense gratitude toward Keanu for saving his life. On the other hand, he struggled with feelings of inadequacy and shame. How could he possibly repay someone like Keanu? What did he have to offer? A man who had everything. These thoughts consumed him until one day, while flipping through channels on the TV mounted high on the hospital wall, he stumbled upon an interview featuring Keanu. The actor spoke candidly about his own struggles, including the loss of loved ones and the challenges of navigating fame. His words resonated deeply with Marcus, reminding him that everyone carried burdens, no matter how successful or privileged they seemed. Encouraged by this newfound perspective, Marcus mustered the courage to send a text message using the number the nurse had given him. "Hi, Mr. Reeves," it read. "This is Marcus, the guy you helped on the street. I don't know how to thank you, but I wanted to say thank you." He hesitated before hitting send, half expecting never to hear back. To his surprise, Keanu replied almost immediately, "Hey Marcus, I'm glad you're feeling better. No need to thank me, just focus on getting well. Let's catch up soon." Their exchange marked the beginning of an unlikely friendship. Over. The next few weeks, Keanu checked in regularly, asking how Marcus was doing and sharing words of encouragement. When Marcus was discharged from the hospital, Keanu insisted on meeting him in person. They agreed to have lunch at a small diner not far from where their paths had crossed, a place neither flashy nor pretentious, much like Keanu himself. On the day of their meeting, Marcus arrived early, nerves bubbling beneath the surface. He wore clean clothes borrowed from a shelter volunteer, his hair freshly washed and combed. Despite his efforts to look presentable, he couldn't shake the fear that Keanu might regret reaching out. What if he changed his mind once he saw how broken Marcus truly was? But when Keanu walked into the diner, all those fears melted away. Dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt, he greeted Marcus with a warm smile and an outstretched hand. "It's good to see you," he said simply, his tone genuine and free of judgment. For the first time in years, Marcus felt seen, not as a failure or a burden, but as a person worthy of respect. Over burgers and fries, the two men talked openly about their lives. Keanu listened intently as Marcus shared his story. How he had once been a skilled carpenter with dreams of starting his own business, only to lose everything after a workplace injury left him unable to work. Medical bills piled up, relationships crumbled, and eventually he found himself homeless, struggling to survive day by day. It was a raw and honest account, one that left Marcus visibly emotional. Yet Keanu never interrupted or offered unsolicited advice. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully, offering words of empathy and understanding. By the end of the meal, Marcus felt lighter, as though a weight he'd been carrying for years had finally begun to lift. Before parting ways, Keanu handed him a piece of paper with a list of contacts, resources for affordable housing, job training programs, and counseling services. "You've got this," he said firmly, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "And remember, I'm just a phone call away if you ever need anything." For Marcus, those final words carried more meaning than any grand gesture ever could. They reminded him that he wasn't alone, that even in his lowest moments, there were people willing to extend a hand. And for Keanu, the experience reinforced his belief in the transformative power of kindness. Though he didn't seek recognition or praise, he knew that sometimes the simplest acts could create ripples far beyond what anyone could imagine. They parted ways that afternoon. Both men walked away changed, not by fame or fortune, but by the profound impact of human connection. In the days following their lunch meeting, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Keanu. He replayed their conversation over and over in his mind, marveling at how genuinely kind and down-to-earth the actor had been. It wasn't just the resources Keanu provided or the encouraging words he shared. It was the way he listened, really listened, without judgment or interruption. For someone like Marcus, who had spent years feeling invisible and dismissed, that simple act of being heard felt like a lifeline. But as grateful as Marcus was, doubt still lingered in the corners of his mind. Could he truly turn his life around? After everything he'd lost, his career, his home, his sense of purpose, he wondered if it was even possible to start again. The road ahead seemed daunting, filled with obstacles he wasn't sure he could overcome. Yet every time those doubts crept in, he remembered Keanu's parting words. "You've got this." Those 3 small words carried an unexpected weight, planting a seed of hope deep within him. Determined to honor the trust Keanu had placed in him, Marcus decided to take the first step toward rebuilding his life. Armed with the list of contacts Keanu had given him, He began exploring the resources available to him. His first priority was finding stable housing. Living on the streets had taken a toll not only on his physical health, but also on his mental well-being. Nights were cold and lonely, and days were spent battling hunger and exhaustion. A safe place to sleep sounded almost too good to be true. But Marcus knew he had to try. He reached out to one of the organizations on Keanu's list, a nonprofit dedicated to helping homeless individuals transition into permanent housing. At first, Marcus hesitated to call, fearing rejection or bureaucracy. But when he finally mustered the courage to dial the number, he was met with warmth and understanding. The counselor on the other end of the line patiently guided him through the application process, explaining each step clearly and offering reassurance along the way. Within weeks, Marcus secured temporary accommodation in a modest studio apartment, a far cry from the luxury penthouses he'd seen in movies. But to him, it felt like a palace. With a roof over his head, Marcus turned his attention to another critical piece of the puzzle: employment. Before his injury, he had been a skilled carpenter, known for his craftsmanship and attention to detail. But years of living on the streets had left him rusty, both physically and mentally. He doubted whether anyone would hire him in his current state. Still, he refused to give up. One of the programs Keanu recommended offered vocational training, specifically designed for people re-entering the workforce after long periods of unemployment. Marcus enrolled eagerly, determined to sharpen his skills and prove to himself that he still had value. The training program wasn't easy. Long hours spent learning new techniques and adapting to modern tools tested Marcus's patience and resilience. There were days when frustration threatened to overwhelm him, when old insecurities whispered that he was wasting his time. But whenever those thoughts surfaced, Marcus reminded himself why he was doing this, not just for himself, but for the man who had believed in him when no one else did. Slowly but surely, he began to regain confidence in his abilities. By the end of the program, he had earned certifications that made him eligible for entry-level positions in construction and carpentry. While Marcus focused on rebuilding his life, Keanu continued to check in regularly, sending texts or calling, to see how things were going. Their conversations were brief but meaningful, filled with updates and encouragement. Keanu never pressured Marcus to share more than he was comfortable with, always respecting his boundaries. This unwavering support gave Marcus the strength to keep pushing forward, even when the journey felt overwhelming. Word of Keanu's involvement in Marcus's story eventually reached the media. A local journalist, intrigued by the unusual friendship between a Hollywood star and a formerly homeless man, reached out to Marcus for an interview. Initially, Marcus was hesitant. He didn't want to exploit his connection to Keanu for attention, nor did he feel comfortable sharing his struggles so publicly. But after some thought, he realized that speaking out might help others in similar situations. If his story could inspire even one person to believe in the possibility of change, then it would be worth it. The article, published in a widely read newspaper, painted a vivid picture of Marcus's journey, from the depths of despair to the glimmer of hope sparked by Keanu's kindness. Readers were moved not only by Marcus's resilience but also by Keanu's quiet generosity. Social media lit up with praise for the actor, with fans and strangers alike hailing him as a real-life hero. Yet throughout the buzz, Keanu remained characteristically humble. When asked for comment, he simply said, "Marcus is the one who deserves recognition. He's working hard to rebuild his life, and I'm honored to have played a small part in his journey." For Marcus, the article marked a turning point. It wasn't just the validation it brought. It was the realization that his story mattered. People cared, not because he had once been homeless, but because he represented the power of second chances. Inspired by the response, Marcus began volunteering at shelters and community centers, sharing his experience with others who were struggling. He spoke candidly about the challenges he faced and the moments of grace that kept him going, emphasizing that no one should have to face hardship alone. One evening, while volunteering at a soup kitchen, Marcus noticed a young woman sitting quietly. In the corner, her shoulders slumped and her eyes downcast. She looked familiar somehow, though he couldn't quite place her. As he approached her table with a tray of food, she glanced up briefly, then quickly looked away. Something about her demeanor reminded Marcus of himself, of the shame and defeat he used to carry before Keanu extended a hand. "Hey," he said gently, placing the tray in front of her. "I'm Marcus. Is there anything else you need?" She hesitated, clearly unsure whether to trust him. Finally, she murmured a soft, "Thank you," before returning to silence. Over the next few weeks, Marcus made it a point to check in on her during his shifts. Bit by bit, she opened up, revealing fragments of her own story. Like Marcus, she had fallen on hard times, losing her job and her home after a series of unfortunate events. Encouraged by his presence, she began attending workshops and support groups, gradually finding her footing again. Watching her transformation reignited something in Marcus, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He realized that helping others wasn't just about giving back. It was about creating a ripple effect, passing on the kindness he had received. And though he knew he could never fully repay Keanu for what he had done, he hoped that by paying it forward, he could honor the spirit of compassion that had saved him. As months turned into years, Marcus continued to grow and thrive. With steady employment and a renewed sense of self-worth, he became a vocal advocate for affordable housing and mental health support for the homeless community. His advocacy work earned him recognition, but he remained grounded, always crediting Keanu for setting him on this path. Though they didn't see each other often, their bond remained strong, built on mutual respect and shared humanity. Looking back, Marcus often reflected on that fateful day when he collapsed on the sidewalk. At the time, he had assumed it was the end, the final chapter in a story marked by loss and despair. But thanks to one man's compassion, it turned out to be a beginning instead. A beginning not just of recovery, but of redemption. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, a single act of kindness can light the way forward. Marcus's journey from homelessness to stability was nothing short of remarkable, but it wasn't just his personal transformation that stood out. It was the way he carried himself throughout. There was a quiet determination in his eyes now, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. He no longer saw himself as a victim of circumstance or someone defined by the hardships he'd endured. Instead, he viewed his past as a chapter in his life, a difficult one, yes, but not the entire story. And at the heart of this new perspective was Keanu Reeves, whose kindness had planted the seed for everything that followed. Their friendship continued to blossom over time, though it remained understated and genuine, much like Keanu himself. They didn't see each other every day or even every month. Their interactions were sporadic, often consisting of phone calls, texts, or occasional meetings over coffee. Yet despite the distance, their connection deepened. Keanu never pushed Marcus to share more than he was comfortable with, and Marcus, in turn, appreciated the actor's humility and willingness to simply be present without expecting anything in return. One evening, while volunteering at a community center, Marcus received a text from Keanu. "Hey, I'm in town next week. Let's grab dinner." The message was simple, yet it brought a smile to Marcus's face. It wasn't just the invitation itself. It was the fact that Keanu remembered him, that he made an effort to stay connected even amidst his busy schedule. For Marcus, these small gestures meant the world. They met at a cozy Italian restaurant, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't flashy or extravagant, but it had character: warm lighting, rustic wooden tables, and the comforting aroma of garlic bread wafting through the air. When Marcus arrived, Keanu was already seated, scrolling through his phone with a relaxed expression. As soon as he spotted Marcus, he stood up, offering a firm handshake and a welcoming smile. "Good to see you," Keanu said warmly, gesturing for Marcus to take a seat. "How have you been?" "Doing well, thanks to you," Marcus replied, his voice tinged with gratitude. "Honestly, I still can't believe how much has changed since that day." Keanu chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Don't thank me. You're the one doing all the work. I just gave you a little push." "A little push?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, laughing despite himself. "If it weren't for you, I don't know where I'd be right now." The conversation flowed effortlessly as they caught up on each other's lives. Keanu shared stories about his recent projects, describing the challenges and joys of working on set. Marcus listened intently, marveling at how down-to-earth Keanu remained despite his fame. In return, Marcus updated Keanu on his progress, his job at a local construction company, his volunteer work at shelters, and his growing involvement in advocacy efforts for affordable housing. As the night wore on, their talk turned more personal. Marcus opened up about the emotional toll his journey had taken, the sleepless nights filled with self-doubt, the moments when giving up felt easier than pushing forward. But he also spoke about the victories, no matter how small they seemed. Landing his first paycheck after years of unemployment, reconnecting with old friends who had lost touch, even the simple joy of waking up in a warm bed instead of a cold sidewalk. Keanu listened attentively, nodding occasionally but never interrupting. When Marcus finished speaking, Keanu leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said after a pause, "what you're doing is incredible. Not everyone gets a second chance, but you've grabbed yours with both hands. That takes guts." Marcus felt a lump rise in his throat. Compliments weren't something he was used to receiving, especially not from someone like Keanu. "I couldn't have done it without your help," he said quietly. "Seriously, man, you saved my life." Keanu waved off the praise with a modest shrug. "Like I said, you did the hard part. All I did was show up. But if you really want to thank me..." He trailed off, a mischievous glint in his eye. "What?" Marcus asked, curious. "Keep paying it forward," Keanu replied with a grin. "That's the best way to honor what we've started here." Those words stuck with Marcus long after their dinner ended. On the drive home, he replayed them in his mind, realizing how profound they were. Paying it forward wasn't just about repaying Keanu's kindness. It was about creating a ripple effect, spreading compassion to others who needed it most. And Marcus knew exactly how he wanted to do that. Over the next few months, Marcus threw himself into his advocacy work with renewed energy. He began organizing workshops designed to teach practical skills, carpentry, budgeting, resume writing, to people transitioning out of homelessness. Drawing from his own experience, he emphasized the importance of perseverance and self-belief, reminding participants that they were capable of rebuilding their lives no matter how daunting the process might seem. One of his proudest achievements was launching a mentorship program that paired individuals struggling with homelessness with volunteers who could offer guidance and support. The idea stemmed from his own relationship with Keanu, a reminder that sometimes all it took was one person believing in you to spark change. Through the program, Marcus hoped to create similar connections, fostering relationships built on trust and mutual respect. His efforts didn't go unnoticed. Local news outlets picked up on his story, highlighting his dedication to helping others. Soon, invitations to speak at events and conferences began pouring in. At first, Marcus hesitated, unsure whether he was ready to step into the spotlight. But Keanu encouraged him, reminding him of the impact his voice could have. "People need to hear your story," Keanu told him during one of their calls. "Not because it's extraordinary, but because it shows them that change is possible." With Keanu's encouragement, Marcus accepted the invitations, sharing his journey with audiences across the city. His speeches were raw and heartfelt, filled with anecdotes that resonated deeply with listeners. He spoke candidly about his struggles, his fears, and the moments of grace that kept him going. But above all, he emphasized the role kindness had played in his recovery. Not just Keanu's kindness, but the collective kindness of strangers, volunteers, and mentors who had supported him along the way. Each speech ended with the same message: "We're stronger together. No one should have to face hardship alone. If someone reaches out to you, don't turn away. A single act of kindness can change everything." As Marcus gained visibility, so did his cause. Donations poured in for the organizations he worked with, enabling them to expand their services and reach more people in need. Volunteers signed up in droves, eager to contribute to the movement Marcus had helped ignite. What started as a personal mission had grown into something far greater, a testament to the power of community and compassion. Through it all, Keanu remained a steady presence in Marcus's life. Though he avoided the limelight, preferring to let Marcus take center stage. He continued to offer guidance and support whenever needed. Their friendship became a symbol of hope, a reminder that connections forged in unlikely circumstances could transcend boundaries and inspire meaningful change. For Marcus, the journey was far from over. Every day brought new challenges and opportunities, each one requiring courage and resilience. But he faced them head-on, knowing he wasn't alone. With Keanu by his side and a growing network of supporters behind him, he felt equipped to tackle whatever lay ahead. And so their bond grew stronger, not because of fame or fortune, but because of the shared belief that kindness, no matter how small, could create ripples far beyond what anyone could imagine. As the years rolled on, Marcus's life transformed in ways he could never have imagined. The man who once lay broken and forgotten on a Los Angeles sidewalk was now a beacon of hope for countless others facing similar struggles. His advocacy work gained momentum, spreading far beyond the confines of local shelters and community centers. He became a familiar face at conferences, workshops, and charity events, his speeches resonating deeply with audiences from all walks of life. But what truly set Marcus apart wasn't just his story. It was his authenticity. He didn't sugarcoat the challenges of rebuilding a life shattered by hardship. Instead, he spoke openly about the sleepless nights, the moments of doubt, and the times when giving up felt like the only option. Yet through it all, he emphasized one crucial truth: you are not alone. Those 4 words became his mantra, echoing through every speech, every interaction, and every act of kindness he extended to those in need. One evening, Marcus received an invitation that caught him off guard, a charity gala hosted by a prominent nonprofit organization dedicated to addressing homelessness. It wasn't unusual for him to attend such events, but this time, he noticed something different. At the bottom of the invitation, written in bold letters, were the words, "Special guest speaker Marcus Johnson." Marcus stared at the invitation, his heart racing. Speaking at a small gathering was one thing, but addressing hundreds of people at a high-profile event? The thought made his palms sweat. For days, he wrestled with self-doubt, questioning whether he was ready for something so big. But then he remembered Keanu's advice. If someone reaches out to you, don't turn away. Taking a deep breath, Marcus accepted the invitation. The night of the gala arrived, and the venue buzzed with energy. Elegant chandeliers cast soft light over tables adorned with pristine white linens and sparkling silverware. Guests mingled, dressed in formal attire, their conversations punctuated by laughter and clinking glasses. Marcus stood near the entrance, feeling out of place in his rented suit, clutching a note card filled with hastily scribbled talking points. Despite his nerves, he reminded himself why he was there: to honor the journey that had brought him this far, and to inspire others to believe in the possibility of change. Just as he was about to step onto the stage, a familiar voice called out behind him, "Hey, Marcus." Turning around, he saw Keanu walking toward him wearing a classic black tuxedo and a warm smile. Marcus blinked in disbelief. "Keanu, what are you doing here?" "I heard about your speech," Keanu replied casually, as if showing up unannounced to a glamorous gala was no big deal. "Figured I'd come support you." Marcus felt a surge of gratitude mixed with disbelief. "You didn't have to do that," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Of course I did," Keanu responded, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "This is your moment. Let me be here for it." With Keanu's presence calming his nerves, Marcus walked onto the stage, greeted by polite applause that quickly grew into thunderous cheers. As he looked out at the sea of faces, he spotted Keanu sitting near the front, nodding encouragingly. Drawing strength from his friend's unwavering support, Marcus began to speak. He started with the raw details of his past, the loss of his job, the mounting medical bills, the loneliness of living on the streets. His voice trembled at first, but as he continued, it grew steadier, more confident. He recounted the day he collapsed on the sidewalk and how Keanu's intervention had saved his life. Not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. That day, Marcus said, pausing to collect himself, I learned two things. First, that kindness can come from the most unexpected places. And second, that no matter how low you fall, it's never too late to start again. The audience listened intently, many wiping away tears as Marcus described the challenges of rebuilding his life. He spoke about the vocational training program, the temporary housing that gave him stability, and the friendships he forged along the way. But he saved the most heartfelt portion of his speech for Keanu. I wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for one man, Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. A man who didn't know me, didn't owe me anything, but stopped anyway. A man who reminded me that I mattered. That man is Keanu Reeves. The room erupted in applause as Keanu stood up, visibly embarrassed but smiling nonetheless. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment as Marcus gestured for Keanu to join him on stage. Reluctantly, Keanu obliged, shaking his head with a sheepish grin. I didn't come here for this, he joked, earning laughter from the crowd. You deserve this, Marcus insisted, turning to face Keanu directly. Because of you, I found my purpose. Because of you, I'm helping others find theirs. So tonight, I want everyone here to know what kind of person Keanu really is. He's not just a great actor or a celebrity. He's proof that one act of kindness can change everything. Keanu raised a hand to quiet the applause, his expression humble yet sincere. Thank you, he said simply, addressing both Marcus and the audience. But let's be clear, Marcus is the real hero here. He took a chance on himself, worked hard, and turned his life around. All I did was show up. Kindness is its own reward, and seeing where Marcus is today reminds me why it matters. By the end of the evening, the gala had raised record-breaking funds for the nonprofit, thanks in large part to Marcus's inspiring speech. But more importantly, it sparked conversations about compassion, resilience, and the power of human connection. Attendees left the event buzzing with ideas for how they could make a difference in their own communities. In the weeks that followed, Marcus's profile soared. Media outlets hailed him as a leading voice in the fight against homelessness, while social media lit up with praise for his courage and determination. Yet, despite the growing recognition, Marcus remained grounded. He credited his success not to himself, but to the network of people who had supported him, including Keanu, whose quiet generosity had ignited the entire chain of events. For Keanu, the experience reinforced his belief in the ripple effect of kindness. Though he avoided the spotlight, preferring to let others shine, he couldn't deny the impact his actions had created. Every time he saw Marcus thriving, every time he heard about another life changed because of Marcus's efforts, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Fame and fortune were fleeting, but the connections forged through compassion, those lasted forever. Their friendship continued to evolve, rooted in mutual respect and shared values. They didn't see each other often, but when they did, it was always meaningful. Whether catching up over coffee, attending events together, or simply exchanging texts, their bond remained strong. To Marcus, Keanu was more than a mentor or a benefactor. He was family. And to Keanu, Marcus represented the best of humanity: resilience, gratitude, and an unwavering commitment to helping others. As Marcus reflected on his journey, he realized something profound. His transformation hadn't been about escaping poverty or achieving success. It had been about finding meaning. By paying forward the kindness he had received, he discovered a sense of purpose that transcended personal achievement. And though he knew there would always be challenges ahead, he faced them with confidence, knowing he wasn't alone. Through it all, the lessons he had learned stayed with him. That kindness, no matter how small, could spark monumental change. That everyone deserved a second chance. And that true heroes weren't defined by their accomplishments, but by their ability to lift others up. These principles guided him as he continued his work, inspiring countless others to believe in themselves and the power of compassion. And so Marcus's story became more than just a tale of survival. It became a testament to the enduring impact of kindness. It proved that even in the darkest moments, a single act of humanity could illuminate the path to redemption. And it showed that heroes didn't wear capes, they carried compassion in their hearts. Years passed, and the ripple effects of Marcus's journey continued to spread far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. What began as a single act of kindness on a Los Angeles sidewalk had grown into a movement, a testament to the power of compassion, resilience, and the human spirit. Marcus, once a man who felt invisible and forgotten, now stood at the forefront of a crusade to transform lives. And Keanu, the quiet catalyst behind it all, remained steadfast in his support, content to watch from the sidelines as Marcus inspired others to believe in second chances. By this point, Marcus had become a household name, not because of fame or wealth, but because of his unwavering dedication to helping those in need. His advocacy work expanded exponentially, reaching cities across the country and eventually making waves internationally. He partnered with organizations focused on affordable housing, mental health services, and job training programs, ensuring that individuals struggling with homelessness received not just temporary relief but long-term solutions. But Marcus never forgot his roots. Despite his growing influence, he stayed deeply connected to the communities he served, often spending weekends volunteering at shelters or mentoring individuals trying to rebuild their lives. One of the most significant milestones came when Marcus launched a nonprofit organization called Rising Together. The mission was simple yet powerful: to provide resources, guidance, and hope to people experiencing homelessness while raising awareness about systemic issues contributing to the crisis. Rising Together quickly gained traction, attracting volunteers, donors, and advocates from all walks of life. At its core was Marcus's belief that everyone deserved dignity and opportunity, values instilled in him during his darkest days, when Keanu's kindness reminded him of his worth. The success of Rising Together wasn't just measured in numbers. It was reflected in the stories of transformation shared by those it touched. Take Sarah, for example, a young mother who had fled domestic violence with her 2 children, only to find herself living in her car. Through Rising Together, she secured safe housing, enrolled in a nursing program, and eventually became one of the organization's most passionate volunteers. Or James, a veteran battling PTSD and addiction, who found stability and purpose through the mentorship program Marcus had pioneered. These stories, and countless others like them, were proof that change was possible when compassion met action. Rising Together flourished, so did Marcus's friendship with Keanu. Though they lived vastly different lives, one in the spotlight, the other working tirelessly behind the scenes, their bond remained unshakable. They communicated regularly, sharing updates on their respective journeys and offering words of encouragement whenever needed. Keanu continued to check in on Marcus, always ready to lend an ear or provide advice. In return, Marcus kept Keanu grounded, reminding him of the profound impact his humility and generosity had on the world. Their relationship took center stage once again during a special event hosted by Rising Together to celebrate its 5th anniversary. The gathering brought together beneficiaries, volunteers, donors, and community leaders under one roof to honor the progress made over the years. It was a night filled with laughter, tears, and heartfelt speeches, but none more impactful than Marcus's keynote address. Standing before a packed auditorium, Marcus recounted the highs and lows of his journey, from the despair of homelessness to the triumphs of rebuilding his life. He spoke passionately about the importance of empathy, urging attendees to look beyond stereotypes and see the humanity in everyone. Then, turning his attention to Keanu, who sat modestly in the front row, Marcus delivered a tribute that left the audience spellbound. "Tonight," Marcus began, his voice steady but laced with emotion, "I want to thank someone who changed my life forever. A man who didn't have to stop, didn't have to care, but chose to anyway. Keanu Reeves, you taught me that kindness isn't about grand gestures, it's about showing up, even when it's inconvenient. Because of you, I learned to believe in myself, and because of you, I've been able to help others do the same." Keanu rose from his seat, visibly moved, as the crowd erupted into applause. For someone who shunned the limelight, this moment must have felt overwhelming, But instead of retreating, Keanu embraced it. Walking onto the stage, he hugged Marcus tightly before addressing the audience. "I'm humbled to be here tonight," Keanu said, his tone sincere. "But let me make one thing clear. Marcus is the hero of this story. Yes, I stopped on that sidewalk years ago, but what truly matters is what happened afterward. Marcus took that chance and turned it into something extraordinary. He's proof that kindness can create ripples far beyond what we imagine. So tonight, let's celebrate not just rising together, but every person willing to extend a hand, lend an ear, or offer hope. That's how we change the world." The room erupted in cheers, the energy electric. As Keanu stepped back, allowing Marcus to close the ceremony, the message was clear. True heroes weren't defined by their actions alone, but by the inspiration they sparked in others. By lifting each other up, they created a chain reaction of goodness that transcended individual lives. In the years that followed, Marcus and Keanu's partnership grew even stronger. Together, they spearheaded initiatives aimed at tackling homelessness on a larger scale, collaborating with policymakers, businesses, and grassroots organizations to drive systemic change. Marcus traveled extensively, sharing his story and advocating for policies that prioritized affordable housing and mental health support. Meanwhile, Keanu used his platform to amplify these efforts, quietly funding projects and encouraging fans to get involved. Though their paths diverged at times, their shared mission kept them aligned. Marcus often joked that Keanu was his silent partner, referring not just to his financial contributions but to his steadfast presence in moments big and small. Whether it was attending fundraisers, offering advice during challenging times, or simply checking in to see how things were going, Keanu remained a constant source of strength and encouragement. For Marcus, the journey was far from over. Every day brought new challenges and opportunities, each requiring courage, creativity, and collaboration. Yet he faced them head-on, knowing he wasn't alone. With Keanu by his side and a growing network of supporters behind him, he felt equipped to tackle whatever lay ahead. His ultimate goal? To ensure that no one ever had to endure the isolation and despair he once felt. To create a world where kindness was the norm, not the exception. And so, their story became a symbol of hope. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, a single act of compassion could illuminate the path to redemption. It showed that heroes didn't wear capes, they carried kindness in their hearts. Through Marcus's resilience and Keanu's humility, they proved that true change was possible when people came together, united by a common purpose. As the sun set on another chapter of their journey, Marcus reflected on how far he'd come. From collapsing on a cold sidewalk to standing on stages around the world, his life had transformed in ways he never thought possible. But more importantly, he realized that his story wasn't just about him, it was about the countless lives touched along the way. Lives saved, dreams reignited, and futures rewritten, all because one man stopped to help another. And in that realization, Marcus found peace. Because in the end, it wasn't fame or recognition that mattered, it was the connections forged, the burdens lifted, and the hope restored. It was the knowledge that kindness, no matter how small, could spark monumental change. And as long as there were people willing to extend a hand, the ripple effect would continue, spreading light into the darkest corners of the world.